Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode. We're going to be joined by the lovely Sam. We're going to be talking about evolving through love and the different versions of you become, as well as your partner. So I'm going to start off by handing over to Sam.
Thanks. So we're talking about evolving through love, and I think with this whole lockdown business, we've seen a lot of relationships breaking down, as it were, and yeah, we've been through quite a lot. Um, so I want to talk about how people don't accept change, not change in their environment, but more change in their partner, change in themselves, because a lot of times we go into a relationship with expectations of who we want that person to be when
Yeah.
in actual fact they evolve throughout the relationship. Like, you will never stay the same person from when you started to
Date.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember you said to me one time, we were just talking, and you were giving me relationship advice, which you give a lot of. She needs to do that a lot. And you said, when you meet someone, there is the past version of themselves. Let's say you're 26, 27. There's 27 years of history that you're catching up on. There's the additional 27th year where you're catching up on who they've become based on those experiences. And there's the evolution as they continue changing and becoming who they will be in future. So I remember you said that, and that stuck. That stuck really, it was ingrained, because I think a lot of times people don't realize that people will evolve, people will change, people will grow. Sometimes people stagnate, but there's adaptation that's required. So my first question will be, how would you accommodate someone as they try to grow or as they are evolving in a relationship?
I think you need to lower your expectations first of all, and then after lowering them you need to then say what your lowered expectations are, because you cannot assume that the other person knows what you want or how you expect them to treat you or behave around you. Do you know what I mean? Because yes, we've seen how relationships are in movies and stuff like that, but those are all hypothetical situations, and then there's your reality, and you're dealing with your person with their background, and they're having to deal with you and your background. So you really have to lower your expectations, and you need to unlearn a lot of the things that you've picked up on the way about what you think an ideal relationship is supposed to look like, because it's definitely not Hollywood
Yeah.
and it's not a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So you need to unlearn a lot of that and literally start on a blank slate. But the thing is, we never start on a blank slate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We never, like, you're already somewhere in terms of what you think a relationship looks like. So having to go back to scratch is a crazy thing to acknowledge, accept, and then work on.
I like how you said the Hollywood. A lot of times we'll watch movies and we'll romanticize what it is to be in a relationship. I know we've had discussions about Disney and how a girl's life literally evolves around, I'm going to get my prince and I'm going to get married, and thereafter it's happily ever after and there's no other story. And I was thinking about how even in movies, for example, relationships will get physical. At no point in the movie will you see someone taking out a condom, for example, and you think that that's okay, because we've built so many expectations on what we've seen, and you won't have the fights. Even in you won't have the fights, you won't have the arguments that come through, you won't have the petty issues like.
The annoying little behaviors, you won't have none of that.
And in actual fact, when someone comes through and they are authentic and they are who they are and they're willing to make a relationship work or at least build one, if it doesn't fit the norm or the standard that we've seen and we've been sold by Hollywood, then you automatically assume it's a failure. So that one is, yeah, that's definitely something we're going to have to come back to at some point.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because, yeah. But I want to ask my second question, which would be, how do you lower your expectations? Um, and what are the expectations that you would deem to be relevant for a partner? Like, what should you expect from your partner, and what then becomes ludicrous to ask of a person?
How do you lower your expectations? I think that's where the unlearning comes in. Because even when you look at, and I always say this, when you look at all the, and it's not just Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's also like the aunts and grandmothers and
Yes.
all these other women that are older than you, have been in relationships and are giving you advice.
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself, the advice that they're giving you, where is it coming
Coming
from?
from.
Is it coming from a cultural aspect? Is it coming from a personal experience angle? Or like, you really need to ask, because a lot of the bridal showers that I've gone to, they all sort of have the same generic advice
Yes.
and expectations, or cultural and social expectations of how a woman should behave,
Yes.
and you know how accountable a person should be in a relationship. Like, there's different levels of accountability. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, the woman is the one who has to be more accountable than the man, which is crazy. And you need to ask yourself, where is that idea
Coming
coming
from.
from? And I think a lot of it comes from the whole patriarchy way that we have been conditioned, right? Because we have to bear a lot of relationship hardships.
Yes.
I think primarily because we're women, and women are expected to be, beasts of burden, but also it's the culture thing. Again, there's a lot of things that are expected of women culturally and traditionally that I personally don't agree with, because I feel like they don't allow you to have room for growth as a
Yeah.
person in a relationship, because you're now put into this cookie cutter.
One size fits all.
Yes, you have to come out looking like this.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't allow you to be who you really are. So I think when it comes to lowering your expectations, you need to really ask yourself, what are the things that I've learned about relationships, and where did I learn them from? And what is the basis of those things? Like, where are they coming from? What's the root? And is it healthy for me? Is it something that I believe in? Is it something that is in line with how I think? Because you have to be allowed to have your own opinions in a relationship. And does your idea of a relationship allow you to have your own opinion? So I think you need to start there, to be like, okay, this idea of a relationship that I have, where did it come from, and where have I been getting all this information from? Yeah.
I like what you said about the unlearning. One of the things I realized when, and I think we've talked about this before, was this idea, Oedipus complex, where girls will marry their mothers and boys will marry their, no, girls will
Will
marry
marry
their
their
fathers.
fathers.
Yeah. And
And
boys
boys
will
will
marry their
marry.
mothers.
Yes.
That one.
Yes.
And I remember we talked about it, and I remember thinking sometimes it's not necessarily that we'll go for the cookie cutter version of our parents, but it's more that the relationships that we then have mimic the patterns of the relationships that we had with our significant parent of the opposite gender. So, for example, I think we had this convo about this guy, was a friend in the past, And I remember I spoke to him and I said to him, why is it that every single time you talk to your mom, it sounds like you're having an argument? You know, what the heck's going on? And he's like, well, more often than not, we are. And if it doesn't start out as an argument, it
It
becomes
will
one.
end up
It will
as
end up as one. And I remember the girl that I, he ended up with at the time was very argumentative. They'd be driving and it would be, hey, I think we're going down this route, we're going down 7th Avenue or whatever. And she'd quip, no, 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 it's easier to go this way, you know. And he found that relationship comforting, he found it
it was
good,
familiar.
it was familiar.
It was familiar.
Exactly, because it was familiar.
Yes.
So I love that point because we also have to unlearn relationships that we've had with our significant parents of the opposite gender, because sometimes the relationships we've had with them aren't healthy. And if you don't then know what a healthy relationship looks like, you can't build one and you can't have one. And the relationship dynamics I've noticed across the board with varying couples are different. There really is no one size
There
fits
isn't.
all. But how would you support or even encourage and build your own evolution in a relationship?
I think this is where mutual respect comes in. You cannot you cannot go into a relationship telling yourself that you're going to change and mold this person to become the person that you want them to be, because what's happening there is there's the person that they are before the relationship, there's the person that they become because of the relationship, and then there's the person that they end up being because of the experiences that they've then gone through. So you're literally dealing with three versions of yourself. So if you can accept that you are changing, it will allow you to accept that your partner is also changing. So I think acceptance is a deciding factor in that one, because you can't give someone something that you don't have. If you don't have acceptance for yourself, there's no way you can have acceptance for someone else. It's just it doesn't work like that. It's tricky, but yeah,
It is tricky. I'm listening to it and I'm
it's
like,
quite tricky.
I'm having little light bulbs in my head, like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. I think the question that I would ask now is, having said that we need to accept ourselves as we evolve in the relationship, and having said that we need to accept the people that we will be with and give them that room and that space to grow, what do you consider to be the things that are unacceptable in any relationship? Because if we can't go back to the norm of Hollywood or what we've been told, what are a few guidelines you'd say build the basis of a healthy relationship, so we even have a table to consider, like what are you bringing to the table before we even go further?
I think I won't even say that there's guidelines. There's a guideline for everything that you do in a relationship. You need to ask yourself, is it coming from a place of love? Real love. I'm not talking about, like, roses and chocolates, and no, like, am I doing this because I want my partner to win in this situation, whatever situation it is, and am I fueling the situation with love? If the answer is no, then you need to just go back.
Drawing board.
Go back to the drawing board and figure it out, because sometimes we respond to how our partners behave from a place of ignorance, where you really just don't know any better. We respond from a place of trauma,
Yes.
because we get triggered, and your response is not because of what they are currently doing to you, but it's because of something someone once did to you.
Yeah.
So you then defend yourself based on
Past experiences.
experience, and your response can be from a place of selfishness, This is where the narcissists come in, and those kind of behaviors. You really need to ask yourself, do I want my partner to win? Even when you're having an argument or a disagreement, do you want them to win? Or you want to win? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you are a team, right? If you're telling yourself that this is a team, then you want them to win, not yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're not working as a team, and if you're not working from a place of love, you're fighting for yourself and not for your partner. So in fighting for yourself, you then fight against the relationship. You're actually just taking 2 steps back.
Yeah.
It's regressive. So it's always, and you just have to keep taking a step back and analyzing the situation, and then coming back to talk about it. And this is something that I think is a continuous process in a relationship. It's not something that happens once. It's an ongoing thing. You always have to just take a step back and be like, is it me?
Yeah.
Is it me? Am I the problem? Like, what did I do to make the situation worse? Is there something I could have said better? Could I have been calmer? Could I have been more loving, more understanding? You really need to just look at yourself first before pointing fingers at your partner. And yes, there's behaviors that are not acceptable. Those are just obvious ones. Anything that's abusive in any form or nature is just unacceptable. If you wouldn't do it to yourself, don't do it to your partner. Simple. It's just, if you wouldn't want your partner to do it to you, just don't do it to them. Because now you just out to get each other.
Yeah. Then it's like World War III in your backyard.
Yeah.
I find that very enlightening. The idea that when you're working in a relationship, then it's us against the world, not you against me, and that you should want your partner to win, and that should be mutually offered. You should have a case where you both want the other person to win. Seeing as we're women, and we are more expressive. I don't ever want to say we're more emotional, because we just express ourselves more freely. Our evolution is closely tied with our emotions. Where do you think partners come into it, or male partners come into it? Do they come into it at all?
In expressing themselves.
No. In our evolution, because our evolution is closely tied to emotions. We evolve, and that is expressively through our emotions. It's not 100% the case across the board, but as the fairer sex. I remember we once had a convo, and we were talking about how we had to build our own emotional kiddie banks, as it were, or your own little self-aid kit, where your emotions are your burden to carry and you have to work through those. So how would you balance that out in a relationship? And would your partner have any place in that?
I think so. I think if you are willing to take a step back and say, could this be a me problem? Then you should be able to say to your partner, listen, I think I'm behaving like this because of A, B, C, and D. It's not you, but I think I'm behaving like this because of my past experiences, and I need to heal from that so that I can then be there for you in a way that's not regressive, or in a way that's not going to make you feel like I'm attacking you, right? I think it's important to say that to your partner, to say it's not you, it's me. Just give me some space to deal with this, then I'll come back to you and then deal with us when I've dealt with the me part. The unfortunate thing in relationships is that when we're triggered, we don't, our first inclination is not to ask questions about where is this feeling coming from. The first thing you think about is pointing fingers to be like, how could you do that to me? Right? But it might not even be them doing anything. They could just be going about their business and something they did triggered you, irritated you, and you blew up, you know? So you need to just think about your emotions. You always, and I always say this to my kids even then, before you do something or say something, you need to stop, think, and then act. Right? You really need to just stop, think, and act, because a lot of times we say and do stuff without thinking, and then you have regrets and, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. But once you've said it, the damage is done, and now trying to heal from that damage that you've caused within the relationship, and trying to heal from this personal damage becomes a challenge, because I think the lines then get blurred. So yeah, I think you just need to be able to communicate freely with your partner and say, I need some time to just think about this, and I'll get back to you. Because there's no rush. A lot of people, especially with culture and everything, think that marriage is a destination. Like when you get married, they'll be like, oh, you finally arrived. No, you haven't. You've just gotten on the bus. You literally just gotten on the marriage bus, and you're going to travel and travel, and you will be on this journey for a while. So yeah, it's you just have to look at it from different angles and really just analyze it and make sense of it without hurting yourself and without hurting your partner in the process.
And with this whole concept of, it's evolution, and you're moving, and you're on the bus, and you're just starting this journey together and creating this new relationship that involves two people but who are working as one. How do you think, or rather, what have you observed as the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic, from lockdowns to lockups to how has that either fueled the very good relationships in terms of, we're really working as a team, or literally just destroyed them and just miss out? How are you evolving as couples during COVID-19?
I think some people have evolved and realized that they are in the wrong relationship.
The wrong ship.
They have gotten on the wrong bus. And they want to get off. I think that's a function of when life is normal, life is happening. Right? People are going to their jobs and whatever, and you're sorting out parenting and all of that. You don't have as much time to deal with a person, right? Because you're both tired. And because you're both tired, you let a lot of things slide, and life will just go on. But if you're stuck in the house with your partner, and you're seeing them every day, all day, at some point you'll start noticing things that you were letting slide. Now you have the time to actually sit there and think, no, wait a minute.
He's chewing again.
This is not the party you want to be at. You're chewing too loudly. Why are you eating rice with a spoon instead of a fork? Trivial things like that, but it gets you even more serious issues. The more time you get to spend with someone dictates the direction of that relationship. Do you know what I mean? Look at it from a food perspective. If you had the chance to eat a burger every single day, your body would notice that, okay, she's feeding us junk. So we're going to get fat, and we're going to feel sluggish, and she's not going to like it, right? Because now you have the time, you have the resources to expose yourself to that kind of environment of always eating the burger. So if you're stuck with your partner, again, it's so important to give each other space in a relationship.
Yeah.
It really is. I cannot express this enough. It's so important to give each other the space to be yourselves in a relationship in order for you to be together.
Yeah. You need time apart in order to be together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because even soccer teams, you come for practice and then you go home.
You go to your
So
respective homes.
yes. So you need to like have time alone to be a person, because being in a relationship requires you to then fall into all these different roles that you didn't think that you'd have to fall into. So there's different versions of yourself showing up for certain things and at different times, and it might not give you a chance to be yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not saying, hey, wait, I've been a wife for today, now I need to be me.
Yeah.
So that I can come back as a wife.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, no, this lockdown did things. I enjoyed it. Can I just say?
Lockdown's been the best
yes,
time.
It's been
Yes.
the best time, but for other people, it's been the saddest time. And I
Yeah.
think either it gave you an opportunity to learn more about yourself,
Yeah.
and to learn more about your partner, or it gave you the opportunity to realize that you're on the wrong bus with the wrong passengers and the wrong bus driver, and
The wheels are...
you're going in the
tires
wrong
are burst,
direction,
the
and
engine's on fire.
yeah, and if you then realize that you're on the wrong bus, what are you doing about it? Are you willing to accept that, okay, this is the situation that I'm in, can I make it better? Or are you getting off the bus and catching another one?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because and I also feel like you need to be honest enough with your partner to say, listen, this is not working.
Yeah.
This is actually not working. It's not what I thought it would be, and I've tried, but I feel like, and I've given it my all, but I feel like it's just,
It's not working.
it's not working. We're better off apart than we are
Together.
And that's commendable in its own right, because you're creating healthy boundaries for yourself, and as painful as it might be, you're winning in that situation, and your partner is winning in that situation, because you are saying, can we stop being toxic and be the best version of ourselves, but apart.
I like that. I like that idea that sometimes you can love someone and you can genuinely care about them, but because both of you aren't good for each other for whatever reasons, you're still pushing for both of you to win. You're still pushing for the relationship to win, because you're pushing for both of you to be better. That's a really awesome way to look at it. And that does suck, but it works.
It sucks, but
you're better apart.
Do you want to evolve and be better, or do you want to degenerate and end up in a place that's just
really
dark
ugly
and
toxic and just death? I've noticed that in the same way that relationships can be romantic, they can be friend based. So you can outgrow your friends, you can outgrow certain people. What happens if, for example, you are on your journey of evolution and you're still on the path of growth and trying to be better, but your partner stagnates and decides that they're quite happy where they are? Yeah, you thought I didn't have questions. You thought I did not have questions.
That one is a loaded question. Are you willing to wait for them to get to a point where they start evolving individually, so that they can catch up and evolve with you? That's the question. That's the ultimate question, because when you meet someone and you like them and you get along and you've got stuff in common, just because you're vibing doesn't mean that you're both at the same emotional level,
Yeah.
or you've both, how can I put it, it's like school. You could
Yeah.
meet, one person could be at degree level, the other person could be at certificate level, but you're still vibing, but you're just not at the same level. Are you, the person who's at degree level, willing to wait for that person to learn and evolve and catch up with you so that you can both move on to the masters of the relationship?
I think you should trademark that line. Trademark it, fam.
Because, hey, and the unfortunate thing is you don't know how long the wait is.
Yeah.
It's something that could take 5 months, it's something that could take 5 years. Are you willing to wait? Like, do you know for sure that this is your person? Because you're going to have to wait for them to get to, until you're like on
It
the same
masters
level.
together.
Yeah,
And that's tricky, hey, because
it is quite.
I think a lot of the times one of the traps that we fall into as women is we fall in love with potential. We
Yes.
are told that, if he then proposes, pops the question, he might not have the best job, he might not have this, or he might not have that, but that will be provided, or that can come later. And you're sort of pushed into the, you know what, you're nearly at your sell by date. We might just have to have a clearance sale, so go. And too often you then get stuck with people who might not meet your expectation or your standard, or someone that you're not naturally suited towards and they're not suited to you, and you now have to do the hard yards of,
Convenient relationships.
yes, convenient relationships. You now have to do the hard yards of literally decimating anything that is standing and literally starting from scratch again. That is commendable, but it's a hell of a lot of hard work.
It is. It is.
So, what advice would you give people before they actually go into relationships? Because you're still evolving as a person and they're going to evolve, but what advice would you give to someone who is then ready to settle down, ready to have a family, but they're looking for a partner on their ship?
Before we get into that, I just want to say I'm against people like saying, yeah, no, you within the next 2 years you need to, get married because your time, your clock is ticking.
Biological clock.
There's no such thing. Not everyone is meant for marriage. Not everyone is meant for a relationship. I know people who are super old, and when I'm saying old, I'm like talking about in their 70s even, and they've never been married and they're happy, quite happy.
Yeah.
A relationship is something that happens in life, but it doesn't have to be
The only
a
thing.
part of your life. There's no rule that says you must